Parents want to hear from you. They want to know, what's your advice? What can they do so that a tragedy like what has happened in your life, that they don't see that pop up in their homes?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest with you, I'm just going to tell you, is keep your kids off social media, period.
In a matter of hours, a happy, athletic 17-year-old went from responding to a seemingly innocent DM on Instagram to taking his own life. So when will these platforms start helping parents?
Because of how the product is built, predators, bad people have unlimited access to your child. And there's not a shield that you can put up that's strong enough to protect them.
It's all happening right now on MOMCAST. "17-year-old Jordan DeMay responded to a message that he got on Instagram from what he thought was a young girl. Friendly banter turned into flirting, turned into compromising photos. And then came the threats. Send money or these photos will go everywhere to everyone you know and love. This conversation started just after 10 o'clock that night. Jordan shot himself in his bedroom at 3:45 the next morning. We're talking a couple of hours here, spent on Instagram, ending with an unimaginable tragedy. The FBI is warning parents of the dramatic rise in sextortion cases happening all across the country. But that's not all that's happening on social media. Bullying, drugs, mental health, it's addictive and it's all consuming, and it's so dangerous. Right now on MOMCAST, we're talking to Jordan's dad. His name is John. John had done everything that we're told to do as parents to keep our kids safe online. And still, his son died. We're then going to talk to a mom of 8 from right here in Arizona. She's part of a group pushing for change from these big tech companies. She's going toe-to-toe with TikTok, Snapchat, Meta. Both she and John were in the room just a few weeks ago. You remember this, when Mark Zuckerberg and other tech CEOs stood before the Senate committee about the dangers on their platforms. Obviously, these platforms are defective if our children are not safe on them. You can get involved. And you can join the fight today. I'm going to tell you how. But first, here's the DeMay story. I want to hear a little bit about Jordan. I looked up some of his about him. There was a really great Nightline piece that you guys had done. I didn't realize, this like successful athlete, homecoming king. Tell me about him.
Yeah, he really was all of that, but obviously so much more to us as parents. Just a really nice young man, and he was really turning into a good human being. He was humble and kind and thoughtful, and he was loving. He was a good student. He was a good athlete. He had a lot of friends. He was popular.
So tell me what happened. Was it March of 2022?
In March 24th of 2022, Thursday night, we were getting ready to leave on a 2-week Florida vacation, kind of an early spring break with the kids. And something Jordan and I love to do, and that's something we do every year. And he would love the beach and love that vacation. He looked forward to it every year. He was out with his girlfriend that night, picking up some suntan lotion and doing some shopping before we left. I had seen him briefly around 10:15, right when he came home from his girlfriend's house. That's the last time I saw him. We just had a short exchange, kind of passing outside on the sidewalk as he was rolling his bag in for the night. And I was heading out to the truck to grab something in the garage. And so we passed quick, but that's the last time I saw him. My other 2 kids were sleeping. My wife was up doing some laundry late, and they were kind of bumping each other in the laundry room a little bit for a couple hours. And she had went to bed around 11:30. And subsequently, we found out later what had happened that night after we all went to sleep. I received a text message on Friday morning from Jordan's mother, just asking if Jordan was at my house this morning, because he apparently texted her in the middle of the night. She tried texting him back and he didn't respond. Jordan's mom texted Jordan's girlfriend at school that morning, and she said they hadn't been at school. So She texted me around 7:30, asking if Jordan was at the house. So I looked out the window, saw his car in the driveway still, which was really unusual because he'd have been long gone, 10, 15 minutes gone already for school, and he never misses school. He's never missed the bus his whole life, so he was always gone on time. So I looked out the window and I saw his truck in the drive, and then I went down into his bedroom, and I found him in his bedroom, and he shot himself in his bed.
What had happened that night, the best of your knowledge? I mean, in a couple of hours, you had just seen him at 10 o'clock that night. So what had gone on?
Well, the first couple days we had no idea what happened. It was such a shock. We had no idea. We were just banging our heads against the wall trying to figure out what could have gone on. We talked with his girlfriend that morning, and said they were fine, everything was good, and so we were just totally dumbfounded on what had happened. But what we did find out later in hindsight 2020 is that that night when I'd first seen him at 10:15, he had received his first text message, an Instagram message from a user account called Danny Roberts. And it was a young lady just reaching out to say hi. And so he had just received that first text message or that first Instagram message from her and started communicating with her. Those messages went on, what we later found out went on for several hours. Jordan took his life at 3:45 in the morning. That first text message came in at 10:15. So from 10:15 to 3:45, the conversation went on, and it started innocently. It was just normal talk. We don't know the entire transcript, but from the little bit that we found out, it was just, "Hey, how are you doing? Where do you go to school?" Just kind of that sort of thing. Slowly ramped up into more of a sexual type conversation, as you can imagine, and then eventually Jordan sent her a compromising photo of himself. He took a picture of himself naked in front of a mirror and sent that to her. What he found out quickly, that was around midnight, 12:15, 12:30, somewhere in there. And then he found out that this nice young lady, Danny Roberts, was actually a black male from Nigeria. And he started getting extorted for money. And there were several players in the game. They negotiated money that started out at larger quantities, thousands of dollars, and Jordan negotiated with them to try to get them to not send the photos. They kept pressuring them to send money. Jordan did send some money at some point. And I think he sent money a couple times, and every time he did something, it really wasn't good enough, and they kept pushing, wanting more and more and more. They kept on him, didn't give him any room to breathe, and he just was at a breaking point. They made him feel like they were actually sending the photos to his girlfriend, his friends' parents, his friends' mothers, other friends, us. So they were building fake content and showing it to him, saying, "Hey, look what we just did. We're going to put it on this porn site, and we're going to send it over here." And so he in his mind really thought all this was going on in real time, and he wasn't acting fast enough. And one of the last communications with them is Jordan said, "I'm going to kill myself right now because of you." And they said, "Good, go ahead and do it. Do it fast, or we're going to make you do it." So pretty tragic. And we found out a couple days later, I believe it was a Sunday morning, I believe we found out that this picture existed, because luckily the extortionist sent that one photo to his girlfriend after the fact. And I think they were going to try to extort her as well. But she already told him, "Well, he's dead, so you can't do that," and so they went on. Actually, subsequently, we found out that they went on after that research. Jordan found out that he was dead, and then continued to victimize other people in the same exact manner as that they victimized my son. So they had no remorse. They just kept going with what they were doing. But for us, we found out about the picture. His girlfriend found it later on in her Instagram messaging, sent it to us. We sent it to our local detectives who handled the initial case. They got the FBI on it right away, and within 2 days, they had multiple search warrants into Instagram, Meta, and discovered the transcript of what actually happened. Because my son had deleted everything off of his Instagram account. He deleted all the messages and everything. He didn't want anybody to know.
As a parent, was this ever on your radar?
No, I mean, God, no. Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say no. I mean, as parents, we always have the radar, right? And we're always doing things to protect our kids, especially online and on phones and stuff. And literally, I did everything I could do when Jordan was younger. I mean, I had I had an iPhone for him that was locked down completely. He didn't have access to his Apple ID. He couldn't download apps. The social media apps were removed. He couldn't get them on there. I actually had a separate router in our house for a long time that was for him, and he didn't have access to ours. And his was on a timer, and it would shut off at night. His phone would shut down and lock out after a certain amount of time. So I did a ton of stuff to try to keep him off the internet as much as possible, but give him a little bit of leeway. But at this point, he was 8 weeks away from his 18th birthday. So, I mean, he was ready to fly the coop. I mean, he was totally capable of living on his own at that point. So, monitoring his social media and stuff was never even a blip on the radar at that point. So, unfortunately for us, that kind of slipped through the cracks with our family situation. But so it was difficult. But yeah, he spent a lot of time on Instagram and Facebook like all these other kids did. But it's horrible. You can never imagine this even happening.
Your case has gained international attention because in your case, you found the people responsible for all of this in Nigeria.
That's correct. Yeah, and we're super blessed to have this, and there's so many families that do not. And we did when we contacted law enforcement, they got on it right away. The FBI took it very seriously. The moon and the stars aligned a little bit. There was a lot of relationships in the back end with the FBI and some of the groups that ended up investigating the case in Lagos, Nigeria, where the perpetrators were arrested. There were some inner working relationships that had been around for a long time, so that helped within the bureaus. So they just worked really well together, put a great case together, and ended up with six arrests total that are involved in my son's case. 3 of which are charged federally in the United States. 2 of which are already on American soil, have been extradited to America, waiting trial here pretty soon. It's been a few months now, but we're looking at having a trial pretty soon in the spring, early summer. And there's one that's still waiting extradition from Nigeria to the United States. So we're pretty fortunate.
A couple of weeks ago, we saw all of the tech CEOs in front of Senate Judiciary Committee, and you were in that room. That room was full, and you met other parents who have gone through tragedies like yours. Tell me a little bit about what was happening in that room. How did you feel? Do you think that there's any progress being made?
Yeah, a couple parts there. That room was quite emotional. It was packed full of parents that had lost children as a direct result of social media for a lot of reasons. And there was some families who I've known for quite some time and have met through our journeys and share the same story with sextortion specifically. And there was a lot of parents with fentanyl deaths, choking challenge deaths that had happened, bullying stuff, suicidal content that was fed to their children on a regular basis during a mental crisis. And so all across the board, all these different stories kind of came together in one place that day, those couple days in DC. And specifically in that judiciary hearing was quite impactful and very emotional. It was hard to watch other parents grieve while senators are telling their stories to the world. And to be able to walk into that room with the power that we had and to hold up the pictures of our lost children because of what social media has done, I hope sends a message, not only to the CEOs, but to the world.
This happened to Jordan over Instagram. When
Correct.
Mark Zuckerberg turned around and apologized to the parents that were in the room, to you, how did you feel?
Well, unfortunately, I missed that real quick segment of that
course.
because I had a senator that I was trying to meet with that could only meet for a short window of time. They were on the Senate floor, so we had to scoot out. And so I missed that 30 minutes. But I did see the apology. I looked at it, and to be honest with you, it's just disingenuous, at all, to all measures. And I understand why Senator Hawley would do that. And I think all the CEOs should have done that in the beginning, maybe, but what does that change? We just sat there and listened to all the nonsense that they were talking about protecting kids, and they're not, and all the things that they say they're doing that aren't true. I was sitting next to Frances Haugen, who was the whistleblower for the Facebook files. I sat next to her all day. So the information I was getting from her while Mark Zuckerberg was talking about the things that he was doing and not doing was not correlating. So it was quite interesting to have that side of the view.
I'm sure you get asked this question all the time, but parents want to hear from you. They want to know, what's your advice? What can they do so that a tragedy like what has happened in your life, that they don't see that pop up in their homes?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest with you, I'm just going to tell you, is keep your kids off social media, period. I mean, really, we need to start with that. That needs to be like the first thing. And if that can't happen for whatever reason, I mean, I know it can, but if the willpower isn't there, then start there and work your way down and stop somewhere. Because if your children are on social media, they're a victim. And our story is so it's not as prevalent with 330 million people just in the United States, but boil it down to the fentanyl, boil it down to even bullying, or young ladies with, just having this false sense of what reality should be for them as young people. And you just tear apart that social fabric at such a young age, and their brains aren't developed enough for it. So my answer to that is keep your kids off social media, period. Because I'm trying to, and it's a struggle when my friends' parents don't care. And that creates a bad atmosphere for the rest of us who do. But that I'm just going hard with that. And that's what I feel is just keep them on social media. But if they're on it, I think you need to make sure that they're not putting themselves in secluded situations. You're not letting your daughters and sons that are 14, 15, 16 years old in their bedrooms at night with social media and access to the world in their fingertips while everybody else is away. They need to be doing it out front, in the public, in your living rooms, in front of people. Parents should be looking at their kids' phones. I looked at my son's phone all the time. I looked at his text messages. I had apps that sent me his text messages back. I read his content. I was on his everything. I looked at everything. You're not invading their privacy. They don't get privacy until they move out of your house.
It seems like these CEOs, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, they want to put a lot of the pressure on the parents. Well, the parents should have been more involved. The parents should have had more rules. They want to pass the buck on to parents. But you were doing everything that you could do as a parent.
Absolutely. And that's the frustrating part about that connection. And I agree with Mark Zuckerberg and the other CEOs that the parents are responsible. And I do share some responsibility with what happened in our situation. And we should take responsibility for parenting as parents. But at the same time, they're not doing anything to help us either. And I've been in the real estate business a long time. I've been immersed in technology for a long time. I'm comfortable with technology. When new stuff comes out, I can handle it, I can learn it, and I can use it. There's a lot of people out there that just don't understand it. They don't want to, they shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to be a computer programmer or be in the computer business to monitor your kids' phone usage. Some of these parents just don't even know how to turn the phone on. So they don't stand a chance in any of this, zero chance. And they're so at risk. It's unbelievable. And there's so many things that these CEOs could be doing to provide a safer place on their platforms, and they're not.
Talking about this and making people aware, have you felt Jordan in this? Have you felt him? Have you felt closer to him?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I at first I felt like I needed to go to the cemetery all the time, and I did a lot, and that just changed because Jordan is in my heart with me all the time, and I just carry him with me, and I carry his fuel, and I owe it to him, and everybody else in our family owe it to him to build his legacy and save other people.
I think my biggest takeaway is that John had done what all of us parents are told to do, set up safeguards in his house. He held off on social media for his son until he was almost 18, and still the unthinkable happened. So as parents, what else can we do? Did you know it takes 31 steps on your Apple device to set up safety tools for your kids on their phones? 31 steps for parents to keep their kids safe on their device. Jill Geigel, who lives right here in the Valley, is part of a national group begging these tech companies to start working with parents. It shouldn't take 31 steps to make their devices safe, hoping that they can team up together and keep our kids safe on their platforms. Tell me about Section 230. It really does take away any liability on these social media companies.
right? Section 230 was a piece of a law that was crafted in 1996. So before they even knew what social media was going to look like, before we could even imagine what the children were going to be doing on the internet, this law was crafted, and it's the last law that was made about social media. So there's been no updates for children's safety in all of these years. So that particular piece of that law, Section 230, grants immunity to all of these platforms and gives them complete immunity from being sued by parents or by anyone, actually, so that they can, originally it was meant so that, they could be like a bulletin board. You could pop something up and they wouldn't want to be regulated on what people put up there. But it's come so far, and we know the big part that they play in the content that's put on their product. So they need to be held liable. It's become a safety issue of the highest degree with children.
Tell me about the group that you are part of.
So I work with an organization called the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Specifically, we give parents resources and help in their daily fight. But our really big push is to try to bring parents together so that we can get real change from these companies. The companies who actually have the power to change, they're the ones that need to change. Parents are running around frantically trying to protect their children. They're playing whack-a-mole over here, over here, over here. There is absolutely no way that a parent can protect their child online right now. I have my own children, and I'm very well versed in what's going on with technology. I live in this world, and I have problems every day trying to keep up and protect my child online. So what we've found is that it is not the parents' problem or even in their ability to protect their own children right now. What's happened is social media has created a product that is defective. It is dangerous for children, and they are the ones who need to take their product and fix it so that children can use it safely. Because of how the product is built, predators, bad people have unlimited access to your child, and there's not a shield that you can put up that's strong enough to protect them. Children are on social media, and teens are on social media every day, almost all day. Right? It's not to the point, the studies that have come out now it's not where in the olden days we'd say, oh, they're getting like 2 hours of screen time or 6 hours of screen time. That's too much. Now we measure it by they're on almost constantly. Like that's our measure. 1 in 5 kids are on social media almost constantly. They never get off. And because of that, and because these products are so defective, bad people have access to your children. And even a 17-year-old isn't capable of really understanding that level of deception and that kind of targeted crime ring that, really targets that age of boys. I mean, it targets that age of boys and exploits them because their cognitive ability is not there yet to separate and to understand, oh, this is a scam. We get scammed. Adults get scammed all the time online.
Right.
And kids just don't have the ability to separate that. It's so dangerous because these products have been built like this. They have access to, the worst criminals have access to our kids.
I have a hard time having hope in this case because it seems like we've got Section 230 that guards all of these social media companies that basically makes them immune to anything happening. Is there real change that's going to happen? I know that we just saw, what was happening with the Senate Judiciary Committee, and that you were there in that room with so many other parents who have had just horror stories, the most awful thing that you can imagine happen in their homes because of social media. Do you think that we're on the right track? And if so, how can other parents join in on the fight?
So because I was there in that room, it was the first glimmer of hope that I've had for a long time. And I would say years, right? I've been in this fight for 10 to 15 years, trying to push for this. One of the biggest indicators that I felt showed to me that there's really a chance for some change right now was the united front, the bipartisan front that was put up by the senators in that room. These are senators that we all know, the left and right, they never get together. I mean, it gets so tiresome for all of us. But in that room on that day, every senator spoke unitedly and said, this must change, and we are going to work together to get this to change. And they asked parents to hold them accountable for that change and to force them to create that change. So that was one of the reasons why I felt like, okay, there's a little hope. Now, the challenge is, I mean, the big challenge is, right, to be able to gather parents, to really get them engaged in this process again. Right. Parents are so busy. Yeah. I mean, that's the problem. Being a parent is so hard. So to try to get a regular parent who's out there just trying to raise a child and put food on the table, to really take a moment and contact their senator and say, this matters to me, it has to change. It's really hard, but we've got to do it. I mean, that's what we've got to do. Regular parents right now have to just step up and just send a few emails and say, this matters, we've got to change it. Because when the parent's voice is strong enough, those senators and our congressmen will be strong enough to overcome the billions of dollars that these tech companies have and are using to lobby against parents.
What's next in your fight? You guys were in Washington. What's next for you guys?
Well, you know, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation works and is out of Washington, and we work on national legislation and policy. And actually, we bring lawsuits against these companies as well to try to push from every angle to try to change this, what's going on. But here locally, I'm actually working on a law right now that's should be going to the Senate floor. It's a small law. It's a simple law. It's called Default to Safety. It's the Default to Safety law. And it's passed through committee, and it should be going to the floor here soon. And all that this law does, it's very simple. All that it does is ask that these companies who own the devices, so like your iPhone or a tablet, when you register your device and you say that it's a child under 18, then they are required to set all of the parental controls to safety. So as soon as you type in, hey, this is a 12-year-old using this device, the device itself knows to put it over onto safety, so that the parents don't have to go, we've tracked all of these different devices. It takes 31 steps for a parent to turn on an iPhone safety tools for their children. 31 steps for an iPhone. And that's one of the easier ones, right? So we're saying, look, just come a little bit here, tech companies, and default your settings to safety for us. So we can start there, and it's only for children. It's not for adults. The devices are smart enough to do that, and push it right over to safety so that when a child gets that device, that's where it starts. It starts on safety mode, right? So that is one thing that we're working on right here in Arizona, that you can contact your own senators and congressmen, that your Arizona ones, your Arizona legislature, and tell them that you support this.
You know, a lot of times it's easy for us to say, oh, well, the parents should have done this, or they should have done this, or they should have kept them off of that. At some point, we have to hold these companies accountable, but it's not happening.
Right.
It feels almost impossible to hold them accountable. They are so powerful.
Right. We have to come together. Parents have to rise up and just say, that's it. We cannot do it. You've given us a dangerous product. We are doing everything we can. And that it really is hard, because as parents, we are programmed to say, no, it's our job. We're the parent. We're trying to do it. You give us the controls. We'll manage our kids, and we're trying to do it. And so we've been put into that mode with technology, because we're trying, it's our child, and we're trying to be responsible. But the trick here is we can't do it. Like, we literally can't do it because the product is unsafe. So if there was a safe product, then we would be doing it, and we would be managing and helping, and all these kids wouldn't be dying, because these parents that I've met and interacted with were good parents trying to use the filters, trying to use all of the things that were out there. And I heard that said over and over in that Senate hearing. The senators would say to these CEOs, they would say, if your product was working, we wouldn't be here today. And that's the truth. If the product was working, if it was reasonable, if a reasonable parent could get on there and keep their child safe, we wouldn't be here today.
So if I'm listening to this, I'm at home, what can I do? What should I do today?
Right. So the first thing is, I always start with my own children and just start talking to them.
Okay.
Start talking to your children. And there's one stat that says parents only talk to their children through their entire teenage life, 46 minutes about internet safety. That's not enough. We're talking 46 minutes a week. We're talking 46 minutes a day. You need to really explain some of these things. Explain sexploitation to those teenagers. Let them know this is a scam. Yeah. So that to protect against that really drastic, horrible consequences, keep the communication going with your kids on a daily basis of what's out there and what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. It's never a perfect system. Kids hide things, and that's not your fault either. That's just built into the parent-child relationship. So just do your very best to try to keep those communication open in a calm way. But if you want to rise up as a parent, if you want to know more as a parent, the first thing I would do if you're in Arizona is I would find out who your Arizona legislators are. And I would contact them today. And I would say, hey, let's support the default to safety bill. Let's take one small step and put a little bit of responsibility on some of these tech companies. And then I would do the same thing here in Arizona. I would, with your national legislators and senators, I would contact them and I would say, please support the upcoming legislation. The one that's coming up on the national level is called KOSA. It's the Kids Online Safety Act. Mm-hmm. And this is the one that we have the best chance with this session. And it doesn't open it doesn't open it up to parents' lawsuits yet, but it does open up these companies to lawsuits from the attorney generals. And that's a big deal because 42 states right now are suing these companies. Mm-hmm. 42 attorney generals are suing these companies. So if we can get this in place, that will start the breakdown of 230. And I think that if you go ahead and hop on and contact your senators, it'll make a big difference.
This is the number for the United States Capitol switchboard, 202-224-3121. No matter where you live, they will connect you to any senator you wish to speak to. In Arizona, that's Mark Kelly or Kyrsten Sinema. You will most likely get an intern or some sort of an assistant answering that call, but that's okay because they will listen to everything you have to say, however long or short. But this is how we make real change. As parents, we know you're trying, but social media is defective and it needs to change. You can make a call. You could simply Google your state senator and email them, whether it's through their website, like on Kyrsten Sinema's website, or the email that they have listed. Do something today. I'm Emma Jade. Thank you for watching MOMCAST.